What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. By the end of today's video, I want to help you to squat and squat better. You see, most often the things that you get wrong in a squat, you're not even aware of. I identified 10 of the most common mistakes that people make when they're squatting, and I'm going to make sure that we fix them today. So with that being said, let's start breaking them down one by one. Now before you go say, but Jeff, I can't squat, because when I do, my knees hurt, or my back hurts, or insert body part hurts. The good news is there's always a variation of a squat that you can perform, and even better news is that most everything I'm showing you here in this video is going to apply no matter what version of the squat you choose. So whatever version of the squat you pick, the first big mistake is, how wide are your feet? Are you a narrow squatter, a shoulder width squatter, or an extra wide squatter? Then again, how would you even know? If you want to perform the best squat, you got to know, and for that, I have a way to help you. With the stance finder. And all you have to do is lay on your back and simply pull your knees up towards your chest and try to find the point that allows for the most hip flexion without causing an excessive rounding of the low back, because we don't want that at the bottom of the squat. So you simply just kind of pull up on your legs and find that comfortable spot. Maybe narrow feels better for you. Maybe rotating your hips out a little bit allows you for that deeper hip flexion and feels more comfortable. Once you find that spot, you just want to line your lower legs up with your femurs. Simply stand up. And then from there, just tweak your stance an inch or so in or out to make it feel optimally comfortable. And of course, just squat down and reinforce that you've chosen the right squat width. All right, so now I mentioned fine tuning. What that means is, what are you going to do now with your feet? Are you going to point them out a little bit or maybe turn them in a little bit? Well, it's pretty generally accepted that a little bit of outward rotation of the foot is going to create more room inside the hip joint when you go deeper, and also to get a better job of recruiting the adductors at the bottom of the squat to help you to power back up. But if you forget to move the rest of your leg in addition to your foot, you're asking for problems, mostly because you're creating torque issues here at the knee. See, if you turn your foot out and you leave your knees straight ahead and you move them forward, you can get a disruption of that tracking, creating a whole mess of problems here for the patella. So what I say is stop worrying about rotating your feet and instead worry about rotating your knees. If you move your knees out, your foot will come with it, as will the hip, so now you don't have that torque being created, so pain-free squatting becomes a reality instead of being something out of reach. Mistake number 3 that you're making is you're too obsessed with not allowing your knees to go past your toes when you squat. Maybe you heard it before, but the problem is you have to if you're going to get to proper depth. And the reason for that is because we need that lower leg to be able to go forward if we're going to maintain proper mechanics of the squat. You see, when we're going down, we can't lift our foot off the ground to create the dorsiflexion needed to get a deeper squat because our foot has to stay in contact with the ground. But we can create dorsiflexion by allowing that tibia to move forward in relation to the foot. And in order to do that, it's going to have to track more and more forward, again, towards your toes. Guys, it's unavoidable. Just let it happen naturally, and if you do, your squats will not only feel better, but you're going to have better mechanics up and down. Mistake number 4 when squatting is not keeping the chest and the pelvis linked throughout the exercise. Not only does this create a more inefficient and less powerful squat, but it also leads directly to the squat morning. We know how ugly this can be, and it's also quite bad for your back. You can avoid this, however, by just simply thinking about the chest and the pelvis as one unit and moving them in space at the same time. It's quite simple because these are pretty big moving targets and pretty easy to control. It becomes most challenging at the bottom of the squat, where there's a tendency to allow the hips to move first, thereby breaking that link between the two. However, if you do this and do it right, not only does this lead to, as I said, a more efficient squat, but one with a straighter bar path. And a straight bar path is a good squat and one you're going to want to try to emulate every time you get under the bar. Interestingly, one of the biggest allies that you have to create and maintain that relationship between the chest and the pelvis is a muscle that oftentimes gets overlooked in the squat, and it's the lats. And that leads to mistake number 5. You're not creating and maintaining enough lat tightness. And the easiest way to do this is to simply imagine trying to break this bar over your back. If you do that, you're pulling your elbows down into your sides, activating and engaging those lats, which creates that rigidity of the torso. Now, no, it doesn't lead directly from the chest to the pelvis. We know that the lats will attach from the arm to the pelvis, but it still maintains that lateral support needed to create that rigid torso, create that efficient squat, and lead to a better overall squat in the end. And so squat mistake number 6 is actually a fairly obvious one, and that is you're using one of these.
Oh, you mean a pad?
Don't you have somewhere to be squatting?
Yeah, you're in the way, actually.
Get out of here, please.
Okay.
But let's discuss this, guys. It's actually, I have a problem with it, but for a far less offensive reason. We're talking more about the anatomy of this. You see, what happens when you put this on the bar is you're creating a really thick bar. And that bar has very few options to sit comfortably on your back. You can't put it in a low bar position because it feels like it's just going to roll off, and most people won't even attempt it. The only place it wants to naturally sit is right here on C7. C7 is the last cervical vertebrae, and it does want to sit sort of right on there because it's comfortably carried right there. The problem is, it's not going to stay comfortable for long because the compression on there could actually lead to numbness and tingling down the arm into those 4th and 5th fingers, and it just doesn't make squatting a really enjoyable experience. The fact is, guys, if you ditch this and get used to putting the bar on your back, you're going to be able to find a more optimal position without the downsides that come along with that pad. Mistake number 7 is actually forgetting from time to time to step out from under the bar and do some unilateral exercises. You see, exercises like the Bulgarian split squat, or even a step up, or a lunge, do a great job of not only helping you to identify those imbalances in the first place, but game plan for working on them. You'd be surprised at the difference in strength levels that you have in your right and left leg right now. We're able to actually assess that with force plates, but what do you do if you don't have access to something like that? Well, you could actually see it in the form of the dreaded hip shift at the bottom of the squat. You've probably seen it before. You slide a little bit to one side or the other as you work your way back up to the top of every rep. It's happening because you're just simply trying to find that stronger leg, but it comes at a cost, usually in the form of hip impingement or worse, a labral tear, all of which would be preventable if you simply just learn to incorporate some additional exercises into your routine. And so mistake number 8 is one that I know all too well, unfortunately, especially more these days than when I was younger, and it's not properly warming up to squat. And so we've all been there either because we were short on time or maybe long on ego, where our idea of a warm-up consisted of unzipping our gym bag, only to realize just moments later that maybe you weren't really warmed up enough. The fact is, guys, if you're looking to get your body ready to perform something like a squat, you got to make sure you take at least some time to prepare your body to do it. If you're looking for a great squat warm-up, you're going to definitely want to check out this video that I put together. I will link it for you at the end of this video. So mistake number 9 is a big one, and it's when we seek out those big squat totals with a body that's not necessarily ready to do it. You see people pile the plates on in a rush to get to bigger and stronger numbers. However, if you built these numbers upon a cracked foundation, then how strong are you really? And that's what I try to preach all the time. You don't want to build just strength. You want to build true strength, absolute strength. In the case of someone like Jesse, sure, maybe it takes a little bit longer in order to make sure that we're doing this the right way, but in the end of the game, when you still have impressive strength totals and you've done it the right way, you've not only gotten stronger, but you've built it upon a foundation that's less likely to crack right at the very moment that you need it the most. Mistake number 10 is actually one of the biggest squat mistakes you can make, and the reason why it's actually so problematic is because it's very deceptive. It happens from the moment you put the bar on your back. I made a whole video on how to identify whether you're doing it. I want you to make sure that you check it out. It will be incredibly helpful, and it will set the stage for success with all these other tips. If you're looking for a program, guys, you can find it over at ATHLEAN-X.com. If you haven't done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn on your notifications so you'll never miss a new video when we put one out. All right, guys, see you soon. Fine-tune and adjust your stance just an inch or two out, and then from there simply... Oh, fuck.